Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to bring this video to you guys because I think it'll be super useful for anyone who is either considering moving to the UK or new to the UK, or if you are like me and maybe you want to think about moving to the UK from America. For those of you guys that don't know who I am, hello, hi, how's it going? My name is Anika and I am American living in London. And today's video, I want to give you guys the ultimate guide on how to move to the UK. So I will be sharing my practical tips, advice, how to open bank accounts, the cost of moving to London, and your national insurance number, getting a job, getting a flat, all of those details I will be sharing with you guys today based on my own experience. Now, if you guys are new to my channel, you might not know this, but I do have tons of videos all about being an American abroad. I have lived in London for over 6 years now, but I have lived abroad from California for 10 years. So I have made a playlist all about my experience, how to move abroad, the best tips of moving abroad, and just being an expat. And I love sharing my tips, tricks, and advice with you guys. So if you want to check out any of those videos or you want any further advice, please make sure to check out the playlist linked in the card right now, or of course, I will link it in the description for you as well. All right, let's actually jump into the video on the ultimate moving guide for being an American moving to the UK. So there are two prerequisites that you are going to have to make sure you take care of before you actually move to the UK, and I'm not going to talk about that in today's video, but the two things that you definitely have to make sure that you have in place before you move here is, the first is that you need to really secure a job or some sort of job contract or visa in order to actually come here and move here. So the best way is to get a signed employment contract and make sure that the company is sponsoring your visa. I have done a video about how this happened for me, and if you guys are interested in that, please check out the card right now. But you definitely need to have a job contract in place as well as a visa in place, or you need to be accepted into a school and have a visa in place. Or the other option is that you guys have to have a spousal or partner visa. There are so many visas out there, and it's so important to make sure as an American you are on the correct visa. If you guys want to see a video all about my visa advice and which visa you need to be if you are an American moving abroad to work, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and I'll make sure to create that in the future. So aside from getting a job, you also need to secure a flat contract or some place to live when you first move abroad. Sometimes you might not be able to get a flat contract because you haven't actually visited before, or you haven't seen flats, or you don't have an employment contract yet. So in order to get a flat contract, you do need to have proof of work or proof of funds. So if you don't have a flat contract before moving, I would recommend getting an Airbnb or a long-term hotel hostel. I will link a few of my recommendations of what you should use when you first move abroad down in the description below. And I will link all the websites that helped me when I first moved abroad. So if you guys want to check any of that out, I'll make sure to put a whole bunch of information down in the description of this video. So now when you've got those prerequisites all done and dusted, the next thing to actually do is to get your national insurance number. So what is a national insurance number? When I first moved here as an American, I was really confused what a NIN or NIN or national insurance number meant. And basically, for those Americans out there, the easiest way to think of it is the British equivalent of a social security number. So you definitely need to have a NIN or a national insurance number in order to work here in the UK. You can actually apply for it through a free application. It's super easy. Once you actually apply for it, you then have to go into an in-person job interview. Again, super straightforward, nothing super tricky or difficult, but you do need to have a national insurance number in order to get your first paycheck. You don't have to actually have the national insurance number to start working, but in order to actually get paid, you definitely need to have it. It can take a little while to get your national insurance number, so what I would recommend is applying for it right away when you get here to the UK. You just have to have a proof of your job contract, and it's pretty straightforward, like I mentioned, but you can start working. I actually started working before I got my national insurance number, and then about a week or two after I started work, I then ended up with a national insurance number, and then I was able to get my paycheck. So don't think that you need it to start working, but you definitely need it to get paid. Also, it's really, really important to note that the tax year in the UK is pretty similar to the tax year in the US. So basically, it's very much the same. It's April to April where you are paying taxes. So the next thing that you have to take care of in the ultimate guide to moving to London or the UK is setting up a bank account. Now, this is one of those things that you just have to tick off and get done on the life admin list, because it is important to have a British bank account in order for your new employer to pay into that bank account. But also, very, very important if you do have a rental contract, because you need to pay rent from your British account. But other than obviously getting paid and also paying rent, having a British bank account will help you pay other things like your mobile phone bill, gym memberships, going out and eating, all those kind of things. You're going to want to make sure you set up a British account rather than continuing to use your American account, because you're going to end up with a whole bunch of fees and nobody wants that. And it's pretty straightforward to set up a bank here. So there's two different types of bank accounts that you can use to set up your first British bank account. It is the normal high street banks, or there are the now new digital banks. Let's first talk about the normal high street banks, because that's what I knew when I moved here 6 years ago. So the most common high street British banks are Lloyds, NatWest, Barclays, Halifax, Santander, HSBC. These are all very, very typical high street British banks. Now, it can be tricky for an expat to open up the traditional high street British bank account, because a lot of times when you are opening a bank account, they're going to want to have a proof of address. Now, I was lucky, and when I moved to the UK, I was able to use a family member's address where I was staying as a proof of address. But if you don't have a proof of address in the UK yet and you want to open up a traditional British bank account, they actually do have nowadays a new to the UK account. HSBC has this new to the UK account, and it's great for anyone who's obviously moved here brand new. I think Barclays also has something similar. I would recommend checking out different banks and their online offerings. I personally use Lloyds. Lloyds is a great bank in my opinion. There's very little fees, and basically it ends up doing what I need it to do, which is hold my money and then pay the rent. When you do go to set up your British bank account, make sure you do have your passport as well as proof of address when you want to open that British bank account. Now, one thing that has changed since I've moved to the UK, which is really cool, is digital banks. So the likes of Monzo or Revolut. Now, these banks are a lot easier for an expat to set up an account with, because you don't actually have to go into a physical branch. You just have to take a picture of yourself as well as a picture of any documentation identifying your identity. And then it's pretty much set up for you and you get mailed a bank card almost within a few days. And these digital accounts are super quick and easy to set up. It's all within an app, very straightforward. I actually have a referral code for anyone that's looking to use Monzo or TransferWise. And if you guys use these, obviously you'll get a benefit of using my referral code, and I will link it down in the description for you. Awesome, let's jump into some practical advice. So looking back at my experience when I first moved here, this is the advice I would give myself when I first moved here. So first, let's talk about grocery stores. So where should you actually buy your groceries? First of all, the most expensive place to buy your groceries in London is Waitrose, okay? They also have the highest quality food and probably the most variety, but you are gonna pay a pretty penny for it. Also, there is a Whole Foods, so if you guys do want to have Whole Foods as an American, which I love Whole Foods, there is also a Whole Foods in London. There's multiple Whole Foods, but again, a very expensive price point. If you want a mid-tier grocery store that has good quality but also reasonable prices, I would recommend Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Asda, or Tesco. These are probably the most common grocery stores that you will see here in the UK, and I personally love using Sainsbury's. And of course, there are the cheapest ones. So if you are a student or you are on a very tight budget, there are two very, very cheap grocery stores here in the UK, and that is Lidl and Aldi. And they obviously are way cheaper. There's not that much selection or variety, but if you are on a tight budget, Lidl and Aldi is where you've got to go. So my next tip of practical advice is phone networks or phone providers. So what's really great about the UK is compared to America, phone bills and phone providers are way cheaper here. So if you are budgeting for a phone or a phone bill here, expect it to be 1/10 or 1/5 of the price you pay in the US. I personally only pay £8 a month for my phone contract, and I would never be able to get something like that in the US. So the most common phone network providers here in the UK are EE, 3, O2, Vodafone, giffgaff, T-Mobile. These are all the most common ones. I would personally say to look online for the best offer amongst all of these different providers. Usually in the January sales is when you can get the best contract. Also, quick tip, it is so much cheaper to get a SIM-only deal for your phone contract rather than purchasing a phone within your provider. So look out for those SIM-only deals. So my next tip of practical advice is transferring money. So when you are moving from the US to the UK, you are moving from dollars to pounds, and it is important to bring your money over so that you do have some sort of starting point, but also you don't want to lose too much of that money when you are transferring it in banking fees. And if you do end up transferring from your bank in the US to the bank in the UK, you're going to end up paying astronomical fees. So what I would recommend is using a company called TransferWise, or what they're recently been rebranded to as Wise, and you will get the best rates in order to move your dollars into pounds. And if you actually use my link that I linked down below for TransferWise, you can get up to £550 transferred with no fees. So if you do want to use my link, I will link it down in the description below. So my next tip for all those Americans moving to London or the UK is that the emergency numbers here in the UK are totally different than the US. We're obviously used to calling 911, but when you move here to the UK, there are some different numbers that you should memorize. The first number is 999. So if you have a life-threatening issue or something that's happening that, either you feel like you're dying or someone else around you is dying, you should call 999. But if you are having a smaller health issue or you are having something that you do need emergency services, but it isn't life-threatening, you call 111. So really important to remember those numbers, because I remember when I first moved here, I wasn't sure what the emergency numbers were. So 999 for life-threatening issues and 111 for smaller concerns. The next tip I have is to register with your local NHS and your local GP. So for you Americans out there in the UK, you will be assigned a GP or a general practitioner when you actually register with the NHS. All you have to do is really fill out a form and let your GP know a little bit about your personal health background. Maybe they'll ask you a few questions about your lifestyle choices and, your health standing so far. They might ask you for a vaccination card, etc. But it's pretty straightforward. And then once you are registered with that GP or general practitioner, that will become your go-to doctor. Now, you can register for any GP that you like. I personally use a doctor that's close to home because it's just easier to have a GP that's close to home and just in case of emergencies, but you can use any doctor that's registered to the NHS. Now, if you do want to have a specific doctor or a specialized doctor, or you have a certain concern, you can also get private health insurance, but I will actually do a totally separate video about the NHS versus private medical here in the UK. But for all of you guys that are first time moving here to the UK, don't worry, you don't need to necessarily take out private insurance. The NHS covers most everything that you're going to need. So feel free to just register with a GP and then you're set up. So my last practical piece of advice is understanding the cost of moving to London. Now let's be really, really clear. London is a global metropolitan city, which means that there are some pretty high costs when it comes to moving and living here. Now, much like every other city in the world, it really depends on which area of London you live in is how much you're gonna expect to pay. And also, when you are comparing London to other bigger cities like New York City or San Francisco, to be honest, I think London is actually a little bit cheaper, believe it or not. Now, housing is probably equally as expensive or maybe a bit more expensive because honestly, London houses, flats, areas are quite small, and what you actually pay per square foot for rental in London is probably a little bit more expensive than New York or San Francisco. But to be honest, from what I hear, London and San Francisco and New York are pretty much on par when it comes to the rental market scene. But one place that I think that you end up saving in London is actually in grocery or food shopping. So I think grocery shopping in London is way, way cheaper than it is in other bigger cities. But across the board, clothes, going out, any sort of expenses that you might have, I would basically say living in a big city in the US is the equivalent cost of living in London. Also, don't be deterred. At first, everything in London will probably look very, very expensive because you are looking at the dollar versus pound comparison. The pound is obviously a stronger currency, but once you actually start earning in the pound, it all just balances out and it just makes sense, and it seems like the living cost to what you're actually earning makes sense when you are earning in pounds. Awesome. To wrap up, I just wanted to share some fun facts with you guys if you are deciding to move to the UK or London, and I think that these fun facts are really important for you to know and for you to consider before you make your move. The first is that it gets very, very dark in London or in the UK in the winter months. Coming from California, especially from Southern California, even on our shortest day, there is light throughout most of the day. But when you first move here in the dead of winter, so like in December, the sun sets at like 3 p.m. It is completely dark by 4. So it is something you have to get used to just because we're obviously further up than most of the US, so you do have shorter days here. The second thing is that London is very, very international. Now, London is way more international than any other city I've ever lived in or visited. I have to say people come from all parts of the world, and that's what makes London so beautiful and amazing, because it is just a melting pot of culture. And finally, the last thing I have to tell you is that there is a pub everywhere. Pub culture is so strong in London and throughout the UK. Just have a look at this map. Look at how many pubs there are all across the UK. So if you don't like pubs, maybe this isn't the country for you, but just get used to that strong pub culture. Anyways, guys, I love it here in London, and if you guys made it to this point of the video, it probably means that you're gonna love it too. If you actually did make it to this point of the video, leave a comment down below saying Tinkerbell with the little fairy emoji, because it shows that you guys are my loyal subscribers and loyal viewers that make it all the way to the end of the video. Right, guys, I hope this video shed some light on what it's like to move to the UK or to London as an American, and I hope it gave you an ultimate checklist of things that you have to consider if you are actually thinking of moving to the UK. If you guys do like videos like this where I am sharing my life experiences, my advice, my tips and tricks as an American in London, please make sure to smash that big red subscribe button and turn on that bell notification so you know exactly when my next video is going live. Anyways, guys, I wish you the best of luck with your move if you are considering moving to London, and I hope to catch you guys in my next video. Bye!